Joy, and I'm the youth librarian at the Schusterman Benson branch of the Tulsa City County Library. And all month, we are celebrating archaeology and learning lots of stuff. So today, I have the great pleasure of interviewing an actual archaeologist and talking with an expert from Gilcrease Museum. So let's introduce our guests. First of all, we have Danielle Culp. She's a member of the Cherokee Nation, and she currently works as an education and program specialist at Tulsa's Gilcrease Museum. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, thank you.
Our next guest is an actual archaeologist. His name is Zachary Qualls, and he's a PhD candidate in anthropology at TU. He studies how material culture affects people. So today, of course, we're going to learn about archaeology, and I have some questions for you guys so that we can learn about archaeology and what archaeologists actually do. So first off, what is archaeology? Is it the exact same thing as anthropology?
So Joy, that is a great question because they're actually not exactly the same. So the archaeology as a study actually falls under anthropology. So in anthropology, we are studying people. And anthropology is the study of human societies, their cultures, and how they develop and change over time. And a great example of this is that when you're looking at people that live in a specific region, they probably have some things in common that define who they are. So I actually have a question for you and Zachary. So Joy, when you think of a drink like Dr. Pepper, what do you call that drink?
I call it soda.
Soda, okay. Zachary, when you think of a drink like Dr. Pepper, what do you call it?
I call all soft drinks Coke.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of different things. Some people say soda, like Joy. Some people say pop. That's the word that I use. And some people call all soft drinks Coke. So depending on where you live, you have these differences that define you. And when we're looking at people groups, the study of them as a whole, that's what anthropology is.
Okay, so if anthropologists study people, what kinds of questions do anthropologists ask?
So that's a good question. Anthropologists that study people like to ask questions about people. And I have 3 examples that are really good questions that anthropologists ask when we're looking at different cultures. Number 1, a big one, is how did we originate as a species? Another good question is how have we changed physically and culturally over time? And a third question that's really good is how are we still changing?
Okay, so now that we know a little bit about anthropology, how does archaeology fit into that picture?
So as Danielle mentioned earlier, anthropology is the study of people, and archaeologists are still studying people, but we do this by looking at objects that people have made and oftentimes left behind. And another way to look at this is that anthropology is the study of people as a whole, but archaeology is the study of looking at the objects that a group of people have made and what they were used for.
Why is archaeology important?
So archaeology is used to study objects that people make. And when we're studying these objects, we gather all this information about them. And archaeologists use this information to understand how people used to live in other times and in other places. And when you think about archaeology, it doesn't have to be something that was thousands upon thousands of years ago. It doesn't have to be that old. It could just be something that's from your grandparents' era, or objects that are from your parents' era. And one day we'll study objects that are from our era.
So earlier we talked about questions that anthropologists ask in order to learn. Are there questions that archaeologists ask as well?
There are questions that archaeologists ask. Sometimes these questions are a little bit different than what maybe like a cultural anthropologist would ask. A question that an archaeologist might ask is, how did people live in the past? Maybe what did these people hunt? Maybe the clothes they wore, maybe what types of food that they ate. And also, I think it's important that archaeologists look at materials from the past that not only help inform us about how people in the past lived, but it can also be an important way to examine how the past connects to the present.
Okay. So is archaeology just one big group, or are there different types of archaeology?
There are different types of archaeology. So one of the earliest forms of archaeology, or a type of archaeology that we call prehistoric archaeology, is whenever archaeologists look at what we call deep time. This is something that is in the very far or distant past. Maybe stone tools are looked at during this time. This is an example of what we call a banner stone.
Okay, so what would a banner stone have been used for?
So a banner stone is a form of a stone tool that archaeologists assume or guess or hypothesize that was used as a counterweight on a wooden weapon called an atlatl. So another type of archaeology is what we call classical archaeology. Classical archaeologists, they specialize in looking at the ancient lives of the Greeks and the Romans. We can see the picture here.
Now this looks like this structure looks like a building that people would have gone in and out of. What is it that we're looking at here exactly?
So this is a structure, it's a building. A lot of Greek and Roman buildings are still standing today. They might look very weathered, or they might be broken down, but archaeologists look at these structures and they can reconstruct maybe the past and look at how the people used them when they were alive. This particular structure is what archaeologists like to refer to as a basilica.
Okay, and do we know about how old this basilica might be?
We do. This particular structure is from the 7th century. So this is approximately 1,400 years ago.
1,400 years old? That's crazy.
1,400 years. But we're even going to go further back in time now, because we have a very specialized group of archaeologists that study ancient Egypt. A lot of times people think of ancient Egypt and they immediately are reminded of the pyramids in Egypt and the pharaohs.
Yes, I definitely recognize this as a pyramid. What pyramid is this? Do we know?
We do know. This is a really special pyramid, actually. This is what is referred to as a step pyramid. This is one of the earliest examples of a pyramid structure in ancient Egypt. It belonged to King Zoshar, and this step pyramid is called a step pyramid because it's multiple layers built on top of each other, but you can see that it kind of goes up the side of the building just like a staircase or steps. So another form of archaeology that's very specialized and is very special as well is what's known as underwater archaeology. This is an image here of my dear friend and colleague, Gabrielle Miller. She is on a dive in the Caribbean Ocean off the island of St. Croix.
Underwater archaeology. I have never heard of such a thing. This looks so exciting. So tell me about underwater archaeologists. What is going on here?
So a lot of times, people dig on land, but also there are the remains of human culture that ends up in the ocean. And these underwater archaeologists, they have to go through specialized schools to become certified divers, and they learn how to scuba dive so that they go into the ocean and they study the remains of human culture that have ended up in the ocean. Oftentimes people live by the sea or they live on the sea and are part of their world is with the ocean. And so there are remnants of human culture that end up in the ocean, and that's what these archaeologists look at.
Okay.
So some archaeologists, or most people, think of archaeology as digging as opposed to the underwater archaeology. And when we dig or excavate, usually these objects come from the ground.
Okay, so when I think of archaeologists and digging, I immediately think of the old movie classics, Indiana Jones. When we see those movies, is that an accurate representation of what archaeologists actually do?
So movies like Indiana Jones are very popular in popular culture. I think a lot of people think of archaeology as something that Indiana Jones does. But really, it's not a good representation, or it's a misleading representation of what archaeologists do. You know, this is a photo of a dear friend and colleague, Dr. Veronica Imraz. This photos are courtesy of the Iowa State Office of Archaeology, where she currently works. And you can see here she has her shovels and her tools, and she's outside in the field. But what these archaeologists do is very methodical. It's very labor intensive. It takes a lot of time and a lot of thought. And the reasons and the purposes that this type of work is done is always in reference to questions we're asking about ourselves and about the world around us. So another form of archaeology that we're going to talk about is what's known as historic archaeology. I myself consider myself a historic archaeologist. And historic archaeologists, we look at the recent past and how the recent past can be reconstructed in different spaces, and also what the recent past and the stories from that tell us about the present.
So I don't know a lot about archaeology, but I do know this is a map. So can you tell us how historic archaeologists might use a map?
That's a really good question. So this is a type of object that maybe wasn't dug up from the ground, but is a really important object that helps historic archaeologists reconstruct the past. Sometimes we use historic maps, sometimes we'll use old text, we use oral histories, we work with community members in order to reconstruct the past. Sometimes it's to answer questions about the present, and sometimes it's to help even reframe or to redirect the way history and the past has been viewed. And so these are important things to help get more clear insight and more truthful insight into the past.
Okay, fantastic. Danielle, we talked earlier about stone tools, and we had even looked at that picture of the banner stone. Can you tell us more about those?
Yeah, so stone tools were made before people started using metal to make tools. So you're gonna see stone tools that are knives, blades, like a garden hoe that you would use to plant crops. We also see scrapers that are used to tan deer hides made out of stone. And we see the banner stone that we looked at earlier that was used on that weapon. And so today we are actually gonna take a look at some stone tools that are in the anthropology collection at the Gilcrease Museum.
Yay, excellent. Okay, so what are we gonna look at?
So today we're going to take a moment to look at some banner stones and some bird stones. And these are really interesting objects because we're not 100% sure of why they were used, but archaeologists have studied them and they've made guesses about maybe their use. So let's just look at the stones first. So this is a banner stone, or an example of a banner stone. It was carved out of material that was specific to a different region where people would have lived. So the next stone, or banner stone, is referred to as a butterfly banner stone. This one is carved out of quartz, so a different material, and it looks quite different than the other. Sometimes it's referred to as a butterfly shape because it looks like a butterfly. This stone is called a banded bird stone. And this is a type of banner stone that's called a bird stone because it looks like a bird.
Are these, banner stone, bird stone, butterfly, are these names the original names for the stone tools?
So that's a really good question, Joy. These are just terms that archaeologists use, and these are not the original names given to these tools by the people that made them. We can see here that archaeologists have used terms from nature to describe these banner stones based on just what they look like. And so this is another type of stone, an interesting one. This banner stone is made out of a different type of material called banded shale. All of the banner stones are carved from stone, but different types of stone are used based on what stone was available to that region. This is another example of a bird stone, and it looks like the other bird stones we looked at, but it's made out of a different material called banded slate. And it's called banded slate because you can see the lines that run through the stone like bands. So all of the banner stones and the bird stones that we just looked at are examples of stone tools that were used by people in North America. Archaeologists study these tools and they can only hypothesize or make educated guesses as to what they were used for. Archaeologists have suggested that these stone tools were used as counterweights on weapons called atlatls.
Did you say atlatl? I've never heard of that. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, so an atlatl is a weapon that was used by people who lived in North America to hunt really large animals like the woolly mammoth. And to take down a large animal like a woolly mammoth, you'd need a great deal of strength. And the atlatl helps you do that because it's like an extension of your arm. So we're going to take a look at how the atlatl was made and how it's used. So if you guys see here on the screen, you're going to see a drawing of an atlatl, and you'll notice that it is a long wooden stick and there's a peg on the end, and the peg is used to balance the dart and it holds it in place. And you are going to just throw this dart with the same motion that you use to throw a ball.
Okay, so I'm looking at this and it looks very simple. It's a piece of wood and a dart, and that can take down a woolly mammoth that we know is going to be at least as big as an elephant. For real?
Yeah, it really, and it's not a lot of effort. You're not going to be worn out. It's not super physically exerting. Just with the same effort that you use to throw a baseball, you use to throw this atlatl, and you can take down really big animals.
That's amazing. So why are the banner stones that we looked at not on an atlatl?
So that's a really good question. Archaeologists have suggested that the banner stones and the bird stones were used as counterweights, just like we saw in that previous image. One reason why we are not sure if the exact use was for a counterweight is because of how the different materials between wood and stone break down over time in nature. So stone tools do not break down as fast as wood does when they're in the earth or buried in the earth. So we have banner stones from thousands and thousands of years ago, but they're not connected to the atlatls because the atlatl, or the wooden implement of the weapon, would have broken down and disintegrated and decayed many years before the stone implement or the stone part of the weapon would have.
But Joy, we can still see atlatls today because there are still indigenous people who make and use atlatls today. So we no longer have those huge woolly mammoths that we're hunting. Sometimes people just use the atlatl to practice recreationally, or you can even use them to hunt animals like a deer. You just have to be a good shot. So I used to work at the Cherokee Heritage Center, which is located in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And we portray what Cherokee life looked like. And I actually had a coworker named Danny who still continues on the tradition of making atlatls and would demonstrate how to throw them at the village.
Please tell me we can see how an atlatl is used. I am dying to see this.
Absolutely, we can. So we are going to watch a little video clip of Danny throwing an atlatl, and you guys should be able to see it on your screen now. So over here we see my good friend Danny, and he has this atlatl, and what we're going to see is a video in slow motion. But right here, you can see that he has this wooden stick, and that's the atlatl, and he's holding that dart in place, and he's just gonna rear back and he's gonna throw it just like a baseball. Now, this video is in slow motion, so it would be a lot faster in person, but let's take a look.
Wow, that is so cool. He tossed that, or he threw that like it was nothing. I am amazed that that small, simple invention could take down a woolly mammoth with such little human effort. How far would that go?
So it really just depends. The current world record for the atlatl throw is actually 252 yards. So if you think about that, that's 2.5 football fields long.
That's crazy amazing. I'm loving that. I loved looking at all of the images that you guys have provided from the Gilcrease collection, and I love hearing more about how they were used. Thank you both so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We were happy to share with you today. And I want to encourage everyone to please go check out the Gilcrease Museum's website. So we actually have a collections website where you can go and look at all the banner stones and all the bird stones that you saw today. And the website you can go to is collections.gilcrease.org, and you can see a lot of our objects. You can browse our art collection, you can browse the archive collection or the anthropology collection, which are the items that we looked at today. And on our website, you can also create your own galleries. So you can create your own login, and you can save galleries of all your favorite objects. And earlier, when we were looking at all of the banner stones and the bird stones, it's actually one of my galleries that you can find at collections.gilcrease.org. You can see that it's made by me. You'll be able to look at everything we looked at today, and you can also search other galleries and save your favorite things, just like I've done here.
So I can make a collection of just the stuff that I want to look at over and over again?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so cool. I love it. Yay. Thank you both so much for being here. One last question, Miss Danielle. Are we able to visit Gilcrease collection in person right now?
Yes, the Gilcrease Museum has opened back up. If you go to our website, gilcrease.org, you can find out how to get tickets. You can also look at our new hours of operation, and we would love to see you guys in person.
I love it. Thank you both again so much for being here. Zachary, our very own archaeologist who's been here with us today, and our Gilcrease Museum expert, Danielle. Thank you both again so much for helping us today and helping us learn about archaeology and anthropology and what those actually mean. And we're going to have to find a time to go see you at Gilcrease, Miss Danielle. Thank you again so much for being here. Friends, if you have any questions, feel free to comment, and we're going to monitor those questions and answer those as we are able. If you want more information, or you're more interested in the archaeologist events that we have going on, visit tulsalibrary.org and check out our Kids Read page. In the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed our show today. Have a great afternoon.